Hello everyone, welcome back to Viti Pathshala. So in this class we would be going to study about the 8th class term 2nd, and there are two chapters that we would be going to do. So these two chapters are the one we would be doing the education development in India, and the other is the development of the industries in India. So these are the small topics. We will take 1 hour. Both the chapters I have combined, and we would be completing this book in 1 hour itself. So that would be our course. So let's start. Education development in India. After learning this lesson, you would be able to know about the ancient system of the education that was in India. Understand the development of the education in the medieval and the modern times. Analyze the educational development during the British rule. You would be able to discuss the importance of the national education policy and understand the education development in the Tamil Nadu. Now they have given a quote in the beginning of the chapter: knowledge is the third eye of men. So it is correct that the knowledge is the third eye of a man. So let's start with the introduction. Education is a continuous process of acquiring and sharing the knowledge, skills, and the values. Now, whatever knowledge I have acquired from various sources, the same I am sharing with you. My experience of teaching of the 3 years, I started teaching in 2017, and now it is 2020. So the experience of my teaching and my learning experience, and the learning goes on. I will say, I am proud to say that today also I am a learner. I am a teacher after, but first I am a learner. Now, the education is recognized as the foundation of a progressive society. So I considered education can eliminate anything, or the everything can be eliminated in this society. It plays a vital role in shaping the responsible people. The world we live in constantly changing, and it is developing. So, to meet the challenges and overcome the obstacles, we need to be well educated and to know the role of the education in the human development process. Now, let us learn the developments of the education in India through the ages. So, education in the ancient India, what type of the education was provided earlier in the ancient India? The historical sources provide the information that from very early time, the tradition of the teaching and the learning had been in the vogue in the India. The concept of the education might have originated from the Vedas. The Vedas, the meaning of the Vedas itself is the knowledge. And there was the immense knowledge that was there in the Vedas, the Rig Ved, Sham Ved, Yajur Ved, and the Athar Ved. The literal meaning, the Sanskrit word Veda is knowledge. It has been derived from the word Vid, which means to know. Our ancient education system evolved over many centuries and focused on the holistic. The holistic development means that the overall development of the individual by taking care of both the innate and the latent capacities. It emphasizes on the values such as the humility, truthfulness, discipline, self-reliance, and respect for all creations. Sources of the learning. Now you must have heard the name of the Panini, Aryabhat, Katyayana, and the Patanjali. These writings and the medical treatises of the Charak and the Shushrut were also some of the sources of the learning. Various disciplines such as the history, logic, interpretation, architecture, polity, agriculture, trade, commerce, animal husbandry, and archery were the taught. Physical education too was an important curricular areas, and the pupils participated in games and recreational activities. The gurus and their students worked continuously together to become the proficient in all aspects of the learning. So learning was a throughout process. It used to go and go. In order to assess the students' skills, literary debates were organized. Students at an advanced stage of the learning guided the younger students, and that make his concepts more and more clear. A system of the peer learning was also practiced, like you have the group or the peer work in your schools. Now, ancient education system in India, a way of life. We will talk about the Gurukul system. In the ancient, both formal and the informal education existed. Indigenous educations were imparted in the temples, pathshalas, and the gurukuls. So, name of my channel is itself a pathshala. Now, there were the people in the homes, villages, and the temples who guided young children in imbibing the pious ways of the life. The temples played a vital role in imparting the education, and they served the centers of the learning. Students went to the vihars and the universities for the higher studies. Now remember this word vihar, it has been asked by the UPSC n number of times. The teaching was the oral, and the students remembered and they meditated upon what was taught in the gurukuls. Many of these gurukuls were named after the sages. Situated in the forest, in the serene and the peaceful surrounding, hundreds of the students used to learn together the gurukuls in gurukuls. During the early period, education was imparted by the teacher, that is the guru or the acharya, to the pupils who gathered around him and came to live in his house as a member of his family. Now this was known as the Gurukul. Guru ka kul, a system of the education. The family of the Guru functioned as a domestic school or an ashram where the student used to remain there. During that period, the Gurus and their Shishyas, the pupils, lived together, helping each other in day-to-day life, and learning was going on. In every activity, there was a learning. There was a message. The main objectives was to have complete learning, leading a disciplined life, and realizing the one's inner potential. Students lived away from their homes for years together till they achieved their goal. The Gurukuls was also the place where the relationship between the Guru and the student used to strengthen with the time. Many monasteries and the vihars were set up for the monks and the nuns to meditate, debate, and they discuss with the learned for their quest for knowledge during this period. Around these vihars, other educational centers of the higher learning they developed, which attracted the students from the China, Korea, Tibet, Burma, Ceylon, Java, Nepal, and other distant countries. The next comes is the Vihara and the University Buddhist period. Taxila was an ancient Indian city. We have studied in the Taxila in the ancient history in the 6th class, which is now in the northwestern Pakistan. It is an important archaeological site, and the UNESCO discovered it as a declared it as a World Heritage Site in 1980. Its fame rested on the university where the Chanakya is said to have composed his Arthashastra. Archaeologist Alexander Cunningham discovered its ruins in the mid 19th century. But now these Pakistani people, they have destroyed the whole history. The concept of the history have been destroyed. The Jatak tales, accounts given by the Huan Seng and the I Sing, the Chinese scholars and other sources tell us that the kings and the society took an active interest in promoting the education. Through the monasteries and the vihars, Buddhist scholars carried out the educational work. As a result, many famous educational centers came into existence. Among the most notable universities that emerged during the period were the Takshila, Nalanda, Vallabhi, Vikramshila, Odantapuri and the Jagad. Whenever a question comes on the education, and you must write these universities, names of these universities, and it will make your answer look more good. So if you mention such types of the example. Now these universities developed in the connection with the viharas. Those at the Banaras and the Kachi developed in relation with the temples and became the centers of the community life in the places where they were situated. These institutions, they catered to need of the advanced level students. Such students joined the centers of the higher learning and they developed their knowledge by the mutual discussions and debates and with the renowned scholars. Now this process in the, if we talk about in the Central Asia or the in the Europe, it was known as the dialectics. As the Socrates and the Plato talks about the dialectics, the method of the dialectics, later it was also adopted by the Aristotle. So same method is known as the mutual discussion and the debate. Here the name, but on the differences of the name, and the more learning you get from the debates. Not only that, there were also the occasional summoning by a king to a gathering in which the scholars of the various viharas and the universities would meet, debate and exchange their views. What was the role of the teacher? The teacher had complete autonomy in all aspects, from selection of the student to designing their syllabus. So the teachers were independent. When the teacher was satisfied with the performance of the students, the course was concluded. He would admit as many as students he liked and taught what his students were keen to learn. The debate and the discussions were the primary methods of the teaching. Teachers were assisted by their advanced level of the students. And this is a good way of the learning. The ancient Nalanda University was a center of the learning from the 15th century AD to the 12th century AD. This is also a UNESCO declared site. It is in the present day Rajgir, Bihar. When the NDA government came again, so it has again started the Nalanda University. So Nalanda University has been again established. The Nalanda was one of the oldest universities of the world, and the UNESCO declared the ruins of the Nalanda Mahavihar a World Heritage Site. The new Nalanda University is envisaged as a center of the inter-civilizational dialogue. Education in the medieval India. If we talk about the education system that was in the medieval India, medieval period witnessed a radical transformation with the introduction of the Muslim education in the Indian subcontinent. Now think like that, you will be thinking that why we do not discuss the Muslim education earlier, because there was no, Muslims came later on. We will see they will come at the beginning of the medieval century, they will come to the India. The religion itself, the Muslim religion itself, its origin lies in the medieval, more in the medieval region. The country was invaded by the various foreign rulers and the several traders from the different parts of the world. The tradesmen and the invaders brought with them their own cultures and intermingled with the people of the country. Beside religion, society, and culture, education in the medieval India also experienced a new perspective. The aim of the education during the Muslim period, that is the medieval, was the illumination and the extension of the knowledge. In the 11th century, the Muslim rulers established the elementary and the secondary schools. Education developed with a fresh aspect during that period, as there was an excellent interaction between Indian and the Islamic tradition in all fields of the knowledge like theology, religion, philosophy, fine arts, painting, architecture, mathematics, medicine, and astronomy. Now, one thing that I want to tell you is that while you are studying, so now you are studying this chapter with me. Now take all the data. Like you have seen a cattle, a buffalo, what it does, it eats the whole thing once, and when it will go and it will rest now, it will do juggling. So the same you have to do. So do juggling after the class. So what is this juggling? Means that whatever you have learnt in this class, then bring it back to your mind, and then ponder over that. Think what would be the, why this scenario was in the ancient time, what type of the education. Okay, masticating. Okay, Raja. So do that, and that will help you. Eventually your concept will become clear when you will think over these things in the free time. Think in the free time, like today or at the before going to the bed, like that. I have studied today ancient, so ancient the education was like that, the universities were those, then the role of the teacher was that. So the Muslim education, it came later on, it came in the medieval era, and how the things were changed. Now, so the in the reasons the change have come in the theology, religion, philosophy, fine arts, the painting, architecture, mathematics, medicine, and the astronomy. Now, however, before the arrival of the Muslims in India, a developed system of the education was already in the place. Muslim rulers promoted the urban education by bestowing libraries and literary societies. They founded the primary schools. The primary schools were known as the maktabs, in which the students learned the reading, writing, and the basic Islamic prayers. And secondary schools, which were the madrasas, were established to teach the advanced language skills. Several madrasas were set up by the sultans and the nobles. The main objective of these madrasas was to train and educate the scholars who would become eligible for the civil service. Iltutmish was the first ruler to establish a madrasa at the Delhi. During his rule, if we talk about the other rulers, they were also educated. So the thing is that to educate the people, the madrasa was started. Gradually, the many madrasas came into the existence. The system of the education in the medieval India was under the control of the ulema. So ulema were the religious leaders. Now during those days, the education was related to the religious training. However, various subjects such as the medicine, Arabic language, literature, grammar, philosophy were also taught. Now history states that the Arab and the Central Asian people brought the Muslim educational model to the India in both the medieval and the early modern periods. Now, women education in India was prevalent during the medieval period. It was prevalent during the medieval period. Now, one of the exponent of the education, or the great educationist person and a learned person, we can say, was the Raja Jai Singh of the Jaipur. He encouraged these scientific subjects. So this is an important point. Many institutions were started by the private individual as well. Madrasa of the Gajiuddin in the Delhi, Madrasa of the Maulana Sadruddin and the at the Shahjahanabad. So they have not discussed this person. They have not discussed the Raja Jai Singh of the Jaipur in the detail. So he have made the observatories. So he have a keen interest with regard to the astronomy. He was a great astronomer. So he made the observatories over India. So the Jantar Mantar was also made by him. In the later medieval era, the British came to the India and introduced the English education. With the coming of the European missionaries, the Western education made the firm advances in the country. Various universities and the thousands of the colleges were formed, and popularity of education was increased. The medieval period saw the founding of the many religious mutts and monasteries, which also took up the cause of the education. The Ahobia mutt in the Sri Ranganam was one among them, whereas the Sri Ramanuja has made the distinctive contribution to cause of the education. Beside mutts, the Jain, Palis, and the Buddhist vihars played a vital role in the educating people wherever they existed. Now they had the large libraries of the book in all branches of the learning. Now next comes is it is in the Trichy. Okay, Raja. The next comes is the modern system of the education. We would be talking about the modern system of the education. And the modern one is more important. The beginning of the modern system of Indian education can be traced to the effort of the Christian missionaries who arrived in the India in the wake of the European occupation. As a result of their effort, many institutions were established across India. These institutions imparted the Western as well as the Indian education. Role of the Christian missionaries. The European came to India for the trade and established the trading companies. They acquired lands and constructed the fortress. Later they wanted to spread their culture and the religion among the Indians. The European thought that they could make Indians understand the administration and the religious theories better if they could impart the education to the local population in their own method. So they started the education institutions were started. The Portuguese were the first European who started the modern system of the education. And you know that the Francis Xavier Zezist started a university at the Cochin. Now they started many primary schools. The first college offering the degree on a completion of the course was started at the Goa in the 1575, where Christianity, logic, grammar, and music were the taught. The John Kirnander was one of the most jealous the pioneers and was perhaps the first for the non-Christian children as an evangelistic agency. In 1812, Dr. C.S. John established the 20 free reading schools in the Vancouver. Followed by the Portuguese, the French opened their institutions for all Indians, where the education was imparted by the Indian teachers through their local languages. They started the higher secondary schools where the French language was also taught. Now, two German bishops, they named as the Jigbulg and the Pluschem, started schools and a training center for the teachers in the Travancore. After the arrival of the English East India Company in the 1600 AD, institutions were established for imparting the education in the English language, because they need the clerks to serve the British. Gradually, Sanskrit colleges were opened in the Madras and the Banaras. The first bishop of the Calcutta, the reverse, the Dr. Middleton, started a missionary college at the Calcutta. Bishop Mount Stuart Elphinstone was actually a strong advocate of the vernacular education, but on his retirement in 1827, his admirers collected funds and established a college offering the English classes named as the Elphinstone College at the Bombay. Now this is one of the famous college at the Bombay. You will find it runs now also. The missionaries made a good deal of the attempt for the propagation of the education in India. Due to their effort, many institutions were established. These institutions imparted Western education as well as the Indian education. Now next comes is the education in the British rule. History of the education in the British rule can be divided into the four periods from the early days of the British rule up to the 1813. Period from 1813 to the 1853, period from 1854 to 1920, and the period from the 1921 to the 1947. And during its early days, the East India Company followed a policy of indifference and non-interference towards the education, as a sector did not form a part of its program. So earlier also I have taken this chapter education, I have done in detail with you, so it is available, you can watch that also. The company's charter was renewed in the 1813, which compelled the company to assure the responsibility for the education of the Indians, though on a very limited scale. Beside the missionaries, the non-missionaries like the Raja Ram Mohan Roy of the Bengal, Pachiapar of the Madras, W. Fraser of the Delhi contributed to the cause of the education. Vidyasagar was one of the person also who have also made the cause of the education. In 1813, the East India Company was compelled to assert the responsibility for the education of the Indians. The Charter Act of the 1813 made the provision for annual grant of the sum 1 lakh rupees for the promotion of the education in India. But if in actual I talk to you, this 1 lakh was never spent. So in reality, it was on paper only, but it was not spent to spread the education in India. The second period was also marked by the great educational controversies concerning the issues of the education policy, medium of the instructions, and the method of the spreading education. First, there were the Orientalists. So there is an argument between the famous argument versus the Orientalist versus the Anglist. The Orientalists were favoring the Indian education, whereas the Anglist with the Macaulay as their head, they were favoring the the Oriental Anglist were favoring the English education. The second period was also marked by the great educational controversies concerning the issues of the education policy, medium of the instruction, and the method of the spreading education. First, there were the Orientalists who supported the preservation of the Oriental learning and use of the Sanskrit and the Persian, which were there famous in the India at that time, as the media of the instruction. They were opposed by the Anglics who were advocated dissemination of the Western education through the English. A third section of the believed in the use of the Indian language as the media of the instruction. Now these controversies were partially set at the rest by the Macaulay's Minute on the 1835. Now higher education was deorganized, encouraging the English education for the upper classes. Now each province was allowed to follow its own policy, education policy, but even then the controversy continued till the 1854. The third phase of the British influenced education may be called the period of an all India educational policy. It commenced with the Sir Charles Wood Dispatch, famously known as the Wood Dispatch in the 1854 or the Wood Dispatch of 1854. It has been asked so many times in the various exams. So you will find this question in the CDS exam. You will find this question in your CAPF exam. The Wood's Dispatch 1854 is called the Magna Carta of English education in India, because it was the first declaration of the British education policy for educating the masses at all levels. But it resulted in the complete control on the state education, divorcing it from the Indian ideals and the culture. The next comes as the fourth phase, may be called as the period of the provincial autonomy. Now this could be your good answer to write. So a question comes on the education, a brief question you have to write, or an essay comes on the education at the British time, then you would be writing in this manner itself. You would be writing in a phase manner also. So the thing that you have to mention in the mains is the phased manner. So you don't have to answer everything. This question, this paragraph, this page would be enough for your answer writing. The fourth phase may be called as the period of the provincial autonomy. The Act of the 1935, the ushered a new era of the educational advancement through the country. The new programs were hit hard by the worldwide economic depression in 1929. Now we can say that the British government at the home, that in the Britain, they were highly concerned about the India, and they were doing the hard work also, because they were formulating these plans. 1935, if you will read, it is a huge document, a bulky document, and various provisions in our constitution we have taken from the Government of India Act. So such good lawmakers were the British people. So the Government of India Act, when it has to be passed, then the several committees had to be formed in the Britain. The committees have to discuss the every provision in detail. It would be like a constituent assembly that have formed the Government of India Act 1935 and provided to the India. So it has all the good features in it. You have an all India federation that never come up. You have the Reserve Bank of India. You have the 10% of the voters get the franchisee. These features were there in the 1935. After the Second World War. So you must know these features. If I am talking about the Government of India Act 1935, your mind should strike like that oh, 1935 Act, okay, 1935, there were the 10 provisions. In Lakshmi Kant there are 10 provisions. I have studied. So you must know the keywords, not the whole is required. You must know keywords itself. What are the keywords? Like All India Federation, bicameralism, then RBI was there, 10%, and that was there, and the extension of the reservation was there, the federal setup was there, and these things that you have to remember, and the same thing will help you in your prelims exam also. After the Second War, a very important plan for the educational development known as the Sargent Report. So, though they have not discussed these plan in the this in complete manner, so these things have not been covered by the this book completely. So you can refer my notes, or they are also available for study in. There is a separate chapter in my book, Education, so you can study that. So there I have made the every plan in the detail, because for the prelims you would be needing the detailed thing. So the Sargent plan was report was prepared. The blueprint had a powerful influence on the contemporary education, both in thought as well as the practice. Now next comes is the Varda scheme. So whenever Varda scheme come to your mind, you must know that the Varda scheme is related to Gandhiji. Now these things I would be telling you through the questions how to remember the things. For example, when I heard the word Varda scheme, so my mind said that the Varda with the Varda, the relation of the Gandhiji, that must strike in your mind also. So in 1937, Gandhiji evolved a scheme. So in September, we would be doing the questions. So at that time, I would be telling you how to remember things and how to how to answer a question in the prelims. What has to be strategy and what UPSC is asking. So we will begin with the previous year question. First of the UPSC, then we would be doing the question papers of the CAPF, then CDS, NDA. We would be completing every paper, because to know the mind of the UPSC, that is required. So Varda scheme of the basic national education. Now till then, till August 20, you build your base. So you build your concept, get ready for an exam mode. So we will enter in an exam mode after the August 20. So when you will see my test series, there also I have written the exam mode. Though this scheme, he wanted to develop those qualities in the future citizens of the India which he considered necessary for building a non-violent society. His system of the education wanted to root out the exploitation and centralization in society and create a non-violent social order. So these were the famous the centers of the education centers. So there are so many things which are missing in this chapter. For example, Sir Syed Ahmad Khan, he brought the revolution in the education in the Muslim society. The Muslim society is a rigid society. So for those people who are preparing for the history optional, so they require the maps also. So sometime in map work comes in the where is the Varda, where is the Naland, where is the Banaras, where is Vikramshila University, where is Takshila. So you must remember these. Map work is more important for the people who are preparing for the. Also, if you also remember, for example, a question comes on the mains question comes, and everyone would be writing an answer on the education. But first thing that you would have done, you have made an India's map, a short map of the India. So you have made a short, then you have written that this is the Varda, then this is the Takshila, this is your the Calcutta, then you have the Banaras, you have Naland. If you make a small the map in your exam, that would be very beneficial. It will take you half a minute and it will make you score more in your the. So such a technique, how would you be developing such techniques? You would be developing through your answer writing practice. When you will do daily answer writing, you will get more ideas how to write good answers. Now next comes is the educational development of independent India. The new epoch-making era in the history of the education was ushered with the attainment of the independence in the 1947. It brought a new hope, a new vision, a new future for the Indians. In 1948, Dr. Radhakrishnan Commission was appointed to present a report on the university education. In pursuance of the commission recommendation, the University Grants Commission was constituted. UGC को constitute किया गया to determine the standard of the higher education. One of the most important events that have taken place in the field of the secondary education was the appointment of a Secondary Education Commission in the 1952 to 1953. It suggested a new organizational pattern, improvement in the quality of the textbook, curriculum, methods of the teaching. An education commission under the chairmanship of the Dr. S. Kothari was appointed by the Government of India in 1964. Free and compulsory education for all children up to the age of the 14 and uniform education structure of the 10 plus 2 plus 3 pattern were its main recommendation. Now this is a current national education policy. So again the government is making a national education policy. The draft is ready, but it has to be published finally. So this is an important concept. A question may come, for example, if the draft policy is, so they will be changing their national education policy once again. They would be changing because to include the online education in that. So if it has been changed by the central government, if new national policy comes, then there would be a question on the education definitely in your exam. The first national education policy in mains I am talking about. The first national education policy of the 1968 marked a significant step in the history of the education in the post-independent India. It aimed to promote the national progress, a sense of the common citizenship and culture, and to strengthen the national integration. In 1986, the Government of India introduced the new education policy. The aim of the new education policy was to transform a static society into a vibrant one with a commitment to development and the change. Now the thing is that the prelims is much tough than the mains. You can predict the question for the mains. So when I used to appear for the CAPF exam, that is the assistant commandant exam, there are two papers. One paper is the objective paper. Paper number 1 is objective, and the paper number 2 is writing the essays and writing the reports, etc. So I was more confident, and I know the topic of the paper number 2. So I know whichever topic will appear in the paper number 2. So the fear was there in the paper 1, regard to the paper 1, because when your paper 1 would be checked, then only your paper 2 would be checked. So I am talking about the CAPF. So the subjective thing you can predict what UPSC will ask, but the objective things are not predictable. The thing you have to be a master for that to qualify the prelims, and if prelims is qualified, then mains is a cakewalk. Now next is it emphasized on the equal opportunities for marginalized sections of the country and the removal of the disparity through the scholarship, adult education and open universities, especially for the rural India. The new education policy called a child-centered approach in the primary education and launched the Operation Blackboard to improve the primary school nationwide. The new education policy was revised again in the 1992. It envisaged the formulation of the national curriculum framework, emphasis on in-service education, improvement of the facilities, and the streamlining of the evaluation system at the secondary stages. Now next comes is the Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan or the Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan. What is that? The Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan. So a question comes in your it is a part of your the education system. A question can come in the mains. So in my bachelor's also, when I was doing the BA, there I used to predict the questions, and one of the topic for our study was the Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan. So I predicted from the exam, before the exam I told the students that, because I have done the previous year papers, so I told the students that the Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan will definitely come. So I used to guess the topics which are used to come in the exam. So Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan, that definitely appeared in the, and that you come to an advantage in the main stage. The Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan is the government of the India flagship program that was launched in 2000 and 2001 to achieve the universal elementary education. The Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan is now the primary vehicle for implementing the provisions of the Right of the Children to Free and the Compulsory Education Act 2009, that is the RTE. Right to Education provides for the free and the compulsory education to the all children from the age group of the 6 to the 14 years. The Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan initiates a variety of the innovation and the activities related to the schools. Some important activities include to provide the midday meal and stipends for the students, the setting up of the school management committee and provisions of the teaching materials for the classrooms. So let's take a small break of 2 minutes and then again we would be continuing. So a 2-minute break, water break, and then we would be continuing. And next chapter is a small chapter which we will be doing. Now let's continue again. So I think, are you back? So from here we would be going to start again. So Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan RMSA is centrally sponsored scheme for the universalization of the access and the improvement of the quality education at the secondary stage, now which was implemented during the 11th 5-year plan period. The goal of the RMSA is to make the secondary education qualitative, available, accessible and affordable to all young students in the all age group, that is the 15 to 16 years. The science lab, libraries, in-service training for the teachers, the computer-aided education, co-curricular activities, and the teaching learning aids are provided by the Government of India through the RMSA scheme at the school level. The Union Budget 2018-19 proposed to give the school education the holistically without the segmented from the preschool to the class 12. So there was an article I saw, I don't know in which, so that there was an article related to the midday meal. I think it was in the uh, Indian Express. I saw that, or it was in the Times of India. Now the schools are closed, and the students, those used to go to the school, they are not getting the midday meal. Now, Samagra Shiksha, the to be prepared with the broadened goal of the improving the school effectiveness measured in the terms of the equal opportunities and the equitable learning outcomes. It subsumes the schemes SSA or the RMSA. Now, in 2017, a committee was constituted by the Ministry of the Human Resource Development to draft the National Education Policy. This committee submitted their report in the 2019. Now, this was all in this chapter. The next part we are not concerned, that is the Tamil Nadu part. So we are not doing that. So I hope you understood the chapter. So it was not in detail though, but an important chapter. One more thing, that do prepare the questions which will come in the exam. For example, the new education system that the government may launch, like for example the emphasis on the online education. So it can be a question in the mains exam, how to promote the online education, and is online education have a future in India. क्या इसका कोई फ्यूचर है ऑनलाइन एजुकेशन का, सच थिंग्स दैट यू मस्ट सी. The next comes is the unit number 2, a small topic that would be completing, it will be completed in 15 minutes. So unit 2, that is the development of the industries in the India. Now, what are the learning objectives? To acquit with the traditional craft of the India, analyze the causes for the decline of the Indian industries, to understand the beginning of the modern industries, know the aim of the 5-year plans, understand the phases of the industrial development in India. Now, let's start with the introduction. The history of the Indian industry perhaps dates back to the history of the mankind, or the humankind. Now, India's traditional economy was characterized by a blend of the agriculture and the handicraft. According to the Edward Baines, the birthplace of the cotton manufacture is India, where it probably flourished long before the dawn of the authentic history. The Burnier, who visited India during the regime of the Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan, marveled at the incredible quantity of manufactured goods. Travainier, a French traveler, admired the peacock throne carpets of the silk gold as well as the many carvings. So these points are important for your mains answer writing. Now, traditional crafts of India. The crafts in the India had a rich history. Now, the page-to-page reading of your classical books, it is required because to develop a mains understanding, and through this your syllabus would be completed for your syllabus would be completed many times. Now, traditional crafts of the India. The crafts in the India had a rich history. Crafts were an integral part in the life of the people. Now, before arrival of the mechanized industry, the production of the Indian handicraft was the second largest source of the employment in the rural India, next to the agriculture. The traditional industry, Indian industry, was known in the field of the textile, woodwork, ivory, stone cutting, the leather fragrance, wood, metalwork, and the jewelry. The village artisans, such as the potters, weavers, smiths, produce the articles and utensils for the domestic use. Now, but some specialized goods were the produced for the domestic as well as the international markets. Some such specialized goods produced were the cotton textile, the muslin, wool, silk, and the metal articles. India was famous for its fine quality of the cotton and the silk clothes. There are references made in the many scholarly works to the profession of the weaver, the tailor, and the dyer. Certain centers of the metal industries were quite well known. For example, Saurashtra was known for the bell metal, and Venga for the tin industry. Dhaka was identified for the Muslim clothes. The muslin of the Dhaka, the mummies in the Egyptian tombs dating from the 2000 BCE were found wrapped in the Indian muslins of the finest quality. A 50 meter of the thin fabric could be squeezed into a matchbox. Now, decline of the Indian industries. So, loss of the royal patronage. First reason was the loss of the royal patronage. The British conquers the transformed the Indian economy from self-reliant into the colonial economy. As the British conquered the Indian territories one after another, the native rulers, the nobles, and the landlords, they lost their power and prosperity. The demand for the fine articles to be displayed in the darbars and the other ceremonial occasions that disappeared. As a result, the craftsmen who were patronized by those rulers lost their importance and they became poor. For generations, these craftsmen have been practicing their craft and they did not possess any other skills. So they had to work as laborers in the field to meet their daily needs. This change resulted in the increased pressure on the agriculture, and there was large-scale underemployment in the agriculture. The substitution of the commercial food crops in the agriculture ruined the Indo-Agro-based industry. The splendid period of the indigenous handicraft industries came to an end as the political influence of the East India Company spread over the various parts of the country. Now next comes is the transition from the producer to the exporter of the raw material. Now Indian handicraft that had made the country famous collapsed under the colonial rule. Now this was mainly due to the competition posed by the machine-made goods that were imported from the Britain by the British rulers. The ruling British turned India a producer of the raw material. So India became a raw material exporting market for their industries and the market for their finished products. And India became a market for the finished products. Moreover, the railways and the roadways introduced by the British facilitated the movement of the finished products to reach the remotest part of the India and the procurement of the raw material from these parts. Now, a question can come on this also, because the new thing that has been come during the lockdown is the Atmanirbhar Bharat. Now, on that, a essay can come also. It can come as a part of your history question, or it can come as a part of your economics question, GS3 paper. But a question definitely will come on the Atmanirbhar Bharat. Now next comes is the competition of the machine-made goods. The textile was the oldest industry in the India. The highly specialized skills of the Indian weavers and the low production cost gave a tough competition to the European manufacturers. It led to the invention of the cotton gin flying shuttle, spinning jenny, and the steam engine in the England, which made the production of the textile on the large scale. India became the market for the finished product of the Britain. As a result, the peasants who had supplemented their income by the part-time spinning and weaving had to now rely only on the cultivation, so they lost their livelihood. Moreover, the Indian goods made with the primitive technique could not compete with the industrial good made in England. Now the same scenario is in the modern time also. If you compare these things, so we cannot able to compete with the China. The China is making the product which are cheap. So our, if we make same product, our the price of our product would be more, so the people will automatically prefer the cheap price. So one thing that the government can do is to increase the import duty. गवर्नमेंट को import duty जो है वो increase कर देनी चाहिए, so that that it comes to par. Now what is the problem? Why the government not increasing? The government is not increasing the import duty because of the globalization and due to the concept of the free trade. The government cannot do itself. So that's why the people are encouraged not to buy the products of the China. So one of the defeat to the China would be this. Now we Indians do not like the Chinese government. We do like the Chinese people, but not the Chinese government. If there had been a democracy, China would be a great country. It would have become a powerful country and it would be supported by other countries also. So democracy is important. Now the drain theory of the Dadabhai Naroji. Dadabhai, and one of the reason for the cheap goods in the China is that there you will find that the labor laws are not there. The labor has been paid less money. So the labor class gets less money what the Indian labor gets. So next is the drain theory of the Dadabhai Naroji. Dadabhai Naroji was the first to acknowledge that the poverty of the Indian people was due to the British exploitation of the Indian resources and the drain of the India's wealth to the Britain. So you can see that these are the two routes through which the material used to go. These are the trade routes. Now next comes is the trading policy of the British. All the policies implemented by the British government in the India had a deep impact on the India's indigenous industries. Free trade policy followed by the East India Company compelled the Indian traders to sell their goods below the market prices. This forced many craftsmen to abandon their ancestral handicraft talents. East India Company's aim was to buy the maximum quantity of the Indian manufactured goods at the cheapest price and sell them to other European countries for a huge profit. This affected the traditional Indian industry. The British followed the policy of the protective tariffs that was much against the trading interest of the India. Heavy duties were charged on the Indian goods in the Britain, but at the same time the English and goods entering in the India were charged the nominal duties. Next comes is the de-industrialization. During the first half of the 19th century, Western countries were experiencing the industrialization. India suffered a period of the industrial decline. The process of the disruptions of the traditional Indian craft and decline in the national income has been referred to as the de-industrialization. The Indian domestic industry could not have withstood foreign competition, which was backed by a powerful industrial organization, big machinery, large-scale production. The difficulties in the Indian industries was complicated further by the construction of the Suez Canal, because of which the transport cost was reduced, which made the British good cheaper in the India. The main cause for the decline of the handicraft industry was the greater employment opportunity and income generation effect of the modern factory. Now next will be the beginning of the modern industries. The process of the industrialization started in the India from the mid of the 19th century. The beginning of the modern industry was associated with the development of the mainly the plantations like the jute, cotton and the steel. So they were introduced in the India. So there was a limited development of mining, especially the coal. The accelerated industrialization began with the development of the railways and the roadways. This growth greatly influenced the economic and the social life of the people in the country. The two world wars gave an impetus to the development of the number of industries such as the chemical, iron, steel, sugar, cement, glass and the other consumer goods. Most mills were set up by the wealthy Indian businessmen. Initially, this development was confined to the setting up of the cotton and the jute textile mills. The first comes is the plantation industries. The plantation industries was the first to attract the Europeans. The plantation industries could provide job on a large scale, and in reality it could meet the increasing demand for the tea, coffee, indigo by the British society. Therefore, the plantation industry was started early on. The Assam Tea Company was founded in 1839. The coffee plantation also started simultaneously. As per the tea plantation was the most important industry of the Eastern India, coffee plantation became the center of the activities in the South India. The third important plantation which gave birth to the factory was the jute. So all these industries were controlled by mainly the former employees of the British East India Company, because they know the tactic how to play in the India. They were the players, old players. Now next comes is the machine based industries. In India, modern industrial sector in an organized form started with the establishment of the cotton textile in the Bombay in the 1854. In 1855, the jute industry was started in the Hooghly Valley in the Rishara near the Calcutta. The first paper mill was started in the Ballygunge near the Calcutta in 1870. The cotton mills were dominated by the Indian enterprises and the jute mills were owned by the British capitalists. Cotton mills were opened in the Bombay, Ahmedabad and the jute mills were the proliferated on the Hooghly River banks. The woolen and the leather factories became the prominent in the Kanpur area. Next will be the heavy industries. The heavy industries included the iron and the steel. Steel was the first manufactured by the modern methods of the Kulti in the 1874. The iron and the steel industries began rooted in the Indian soil in the beginning of the 20th century. However, the credit for the developing a large-scale manufacture of the steel in the India goes to the Jamshedji Tata. The Tata Iron and the Steel Company was set up in the 1907 at the Jamshedpur. It started producing the pig iron in the 1911, steel ingots in the 1912. Now Tisco, this is the Jamshedpur. Now growth of the modern industries. The length of the railway increased from the 2,573 km in the 1861 to the 55,773 km in 1914. The opening of the Suez Canal also shortened the distance between the Europe and the India by about 4,830 km. This reduced the distance facilitated by the further industrialization of the cotton of the India. As a result of the Swadeshi movement, the cotton mills increased from the 194 to the 273 and the jute mills from 36 to the 64. The British has consolidated the power in the India, thereby attracted large number of the foreigners. entrepreneurs and the capital, particularly from the England. The foreign capitalists were attracted to the Indian industry as it held the prospect of the high profit. Labor was extremely cheap. Raw material were the cheaply available, and the India and its neighbors provided a ready market for the selling. Now, Confederation of the Indian Industries. The Confederation of the Indian Industries is a business association in the India. CII is a non-government, not for the profit, industry-led and the industry-managed organization. It was founded in 1985. It has 9,000 members from the private as well as the public sectors, including the small and the medium enterprises and multinational corporations. The industrial growth in India. Next topic is the industrial growth in India. To realize the dream of the development of the industries, the Indian government adopted the certain industrial policies and the 5-year plans. One of the most important innovation in the industrial field after the independence had been the introduction of the 5-year plan and the direct participation in the industry by the government as expressed in the Industrial Revolution of the 1948. The resolution delineated the role of the state in the industrial development both as the entrepreneur and as well as the authority. Now, as per the Industrial Policy Resolution 1956, the industries were classified into the 3 categories. Now, these were the Schedule A, Schedule B and the Schedule 3. Only the government can handle the industries. Some of these are the atomic energy, electrical, iron and the steel, and the others, they came under the Schedule 1. The Schedule B were this comprise the road and the sea transportation, machine tools, aluminium, chemical include the plastics and the fertilizers, ferroalloy and the certain types of the mining. The third type of the C type, it comes under the category remaining industries left to the private sector. The classification of the industries. On the basis of the raw material used, industries can be classified into the agro-based and mineral-based. Now, according to their role, it can be classified into basic and the key industries. On the basis of the ownership, it can be classified into public sector, private sector, joint sector, and cooperative sector. The next thing is that the phases of the industrial development in India. The first thing is that the industrial development during the 1950 to 1965. During this phase, a majority of the consumer goods were produced in India. The industrial sector was underdeveloped and the weak infrastructure. Now, technically, skills were in the short supply. The first 3 5-year plan were very important because their aim was to build a strong industrial base in the independent India. These plans mostly focused on the development of the capital goods sector. As a result, this phase witnessed a strong acceleration in the growth of the rate of the production. Now, next comes is the industrialization development during the 1975 to the 1965 to the 1980. As the first 3 5-year plan mostly focused on the development of the capital goods sector, the consumer goods sector was neglected. The consumer goods sector is the backbone of the rural economy. As a result, there was a fall in the growth rate of the industrial production. So this period is marked as the period of the structural retrogression. Now, industrial development during the 1980 till 1991. The period of the 1980s can be considered as the period of the industrial recovery. This period witnessed quite a healthy industrial growth. The next comes is the industrial development post 1991 reforms. So LPG reforms that comes in the 1994. Liberalization, privatization and globalization. The year 1991 ushered a new era of the economic liberalization. India took the major decision to improve the performance of the industrial sector. The 10th and the 11th 5-year plan witnessed a high growth rate in the industry's production. The abolition of the industrial licensing, dismantling of the price controls, delusion of the reservation of the small scale industries, and virtual abolition of the monopoly law enabled the Indian industries to flourish. The new policy welcomes the foreign investments. Now, there is a map given on the above page that is related to your places of the industries, the same we did in the last class, the places of the education. So this relates to the places of your industries. Now, a last topic, that is modernization. India has now a large variety of industries producing the goods of the varied nature. Now, recently you have seen that our Prime Minister have given the youth a challenge, that can they build the softwares like the TikTok and the other facilities. Can they build that? The Prime Minister himself said if such a platform comes, he would be a part of that platform. Now, some modern industries have really grown and they are competing effectively with the outside world. Now, in the modern time, the IT is also a top industry. Now, everything AI became an top consult. Artificial intelligence is the technology or the industry that we need. Now, this has reduced our dependence greatly on the foreign experts and the technologists. On the contrary, India is exporting the trained personnel to relatively less developed countries. The term information technology include the computer and the communication technology along with the software, along with the three sector model of the primary, secondary and tertiary industries. A fourth sector, information related industries, has emerged, and this we can see that this is the fourth revolution also, that is the IT revolution. The knowledge economy depicts the automation. So the third globalization. Oh yeah, yes, Raja. The knowledge economy depicts the automation of the labor intensive manufacturing and the service activities, as well as the growth in the new service industries such as the healthcare, distance education, the software production, and the multimedia entertainment. Now, yesterday there is a teacher. I was watching his video. So some people are criticizing the government negatively. So at the time of the crisis, they are saying that these all things are made by the our government itself. So they are accusing the government for making the corona. They are accusing the government for the China's the thing that happened with the China and the Atmanirbhar Bharat. They does not believe in the Atmanirbhar Bharat. The Congress people. So the thing is that we must support the government. This Atmanirbhar Bharat, that is not a new thing. In the 1950 itself, the Mahatma Gandhi, or before that 1947, the Mahatma Gandhi talk about the self-reliance or these Atmanirbhar. The village must be self-reliant. So that was said by the Mahatma Gandhi later at that time. And the thing is that these peoples they are sitting at home, so they are making the fool of the students, because their shops are not open now. The students are not buying their courses because the exams are not lined up. So they say that the corona is nothing, you can roam around. The people are roaming around. So yesterday's newspaper, a young AIMS doctor, he died. I was very shocked. Why he died? He died because he was serving the people, and he got an admission. He was a 21 ranker in the MD exam, and he got the admission in the AIMS for doing the MD or the MS. So such was the scenario. Those people who are not serving, so go and serve the people. Then you will get how is the when a person will lose a family member with the corona, then he will came to know the importance of the remaining at home. So I felt very bad that they are not concerning about the this corona, and one reason that the corona is spreading is death itself, that these people do not want the corona to end. And a constable died, and the other police officers serving, they are dying. A special officer of the Delhi police, he died. So we are losing so much of our important leaders. The knowledge economy depicts the automation of the labor intensive manufacturing and the service activities, as well as the growth in the new service industries such as the health care, distance education, software production, and the multimedia entertainment. Now next comes is this self-reliance. Another positive aspect of the industrial growth is the attainment of the goal of the self-reliance. We have achieved the self-reliance in the machinery, plant, and the other equipment. Today, the bulk of the equipments required for the industrial and the infrastructural development is produced within the country. Now, the Indian roads network had become one of the largest in the world. The government efforts led to the expansion of the network of the national highways, state highways, and the major districts roads, which in turn has directly contributed to the industrial growth. As India needs the power to drive its growth engine, now it has triggered a noteworthy improvement of the availability of the energy. After almost 7 decades of the independence, India had emerged the third largest producer of the electricity in India, and hats off to the Bhabha. So whoever not have seen the documentary on the Bhabha, do search and the see the who was the Bhabha. And the industrialization is an important component of the economic growth. Indian industrial expansion over the planned period presents a mixed picture compared to the pre-independence level. Industrial growth during the 5-year period is phenomenal. So now we have completed this chapter. The 3 chapters are completed. So the term third I would be doing at the 9 p.m. So this is the complete chapter. Now the other part is the geography. We are not doing the geography. We are completing first the history complete. So today your 8th class textbook would be completed. Do revise on the same day or within a week. Do revise these things. And do motivated रहो, ठीक है, परेशान मत रहो, ठीक है, don't get stressed up. Exam will definitely take place. I know every person is feeling distress. हर किसी को जो है एग्ज़ाम की पड़ी हुई है, कब एग्ज़ाम होगा, कब जॉब मिलेगी. So don't feel stressed. So be calm and be safe. If you have a life, then only you can appear for the exam. So ask those people who are falling ill. So one of the student, she is not well. So the thing is that ना, जिनको हो जाता है या जिनकी फैमिली से कोई बंदा जाता है ना बीमारी की वजह से, उनको पता लगता है कि क्या वो लॉस है. Now those people who died at the border defending the country, and these people are asking what the Indian army is doing. So shame on these people. So that's all. Thank you all of you. Now we would be meeting again at the 9 p.m. 9 a.m. and we would be completing the 2 more chapters. The term third I would be completing.